The mystery of alien encounters had always been surrounded by doubt and whispers. For centuries, stories of strange lights and visitors from beyond had been dismissed as fantasy or fear. But there were moments in history so powerful, so undeniable, that they could not be ignored. These were the encounters that shook not just Earth, but the galaxy itself. The first of these encounters took place in a quiet desert town in New Mexico in the late 1940s. It was a night like any other, with clear skies and stars glowing above. Farmers and ranchers went about their work, unaware that history was about to change. At dawn, a massive explosion shook the ground. Locals rushed outside and saw a column of smoke rising from the desert. When they reached the site, they found something no one had ever seen before. A wreck, unlike any plane or machine built by humans. The object lay broken across the sand, its surface glowing faintly in the morning sun. Pieces were scattered for miles, smooth metal that resisted cutting and bending. Some said they saw strange markings, symbols carved into the wreckage. Soldiers arrived quickly, covering the area and pushing locals away. Trucks carried the pieces under heavy guard, and the witnesses were told to remain silent. But word spread, as it always does. Stories of a flying saucer crash reached the newspapers, and the world caught its first glimpse of what would become the most famous UFO case of all time. Among the soldiers at the site was a young officer who couldn't forget what he saw. Years later, he would speak about the strange bodies taken from the wreck. Not human, but small, fragile, with large dark eyes that seemed to stare even in death. The military denied it all, calling it a weather balloon, but those who were there knew the truth. Something had fallen from the sky, something not of this earth. That was the first real encounter. The crash that changed how humanity saw the universe. The second encounter happened decades later, but it shook the world just as deeply. In a quiet village in Africa, children playing in a field saw a glowing object land nearby. At first, they thought it was a trick of the sun, but the light grew brighter, and a craft appeared. Small beings stepped out, thin with large heads and dark eyes. The children froze, too scared to move. The beings did not harm them. They only stood there, watching silently, before turning and vanishing back into the craft. When the children told their teachers, the adults doubted them. But the children's stories never changed. They described the same beings, the same craft, the same moment of silence. Investigators arrived from around the world. They interviewed each child separately, and the details matched perfectly. Experts said no group of children could create such a story without mistakes. The event left the village forever marked, a place where innocence had met something unexplainable. The world once again asked the question, why reveal themselves only to children? Some said it was to show they came in peace, choosing the purest witnesses. Others believed it was a test, to see how humanity reacted when the most honest voices spoke the truth. Both encounters created ripples across the planet. Governments worked harder to hide information. Secret files were locked away, marked top secret. Scientists whispered of new technologies tested in hidden labs. And ordinary people looked at the skies with fresh eyes, knowing the universe was no longer empty. David, a young researcher in Arizona decades later, studied both cases with obsession. He read every report, every testimony, every file he could find. To him, these encounters were not isolated. They were connected, pieces of a larger puzzle. At night he sat under the stars, his notebooks filled with drawings of strange ships and symbols. He believed the truth was out there, waiting to be seen. And deep inside, he knew the encounters were only the beginning. The galaxy was watching, and humanity's story with its visitors had only just started. The first two encounters had left the world shaken, But the third encounter was even harder to dismiss. It happened not in a small town or a quiet village, but in the skies above one of the busiest airports in the world. It was late afternoon in Chicago when air traffic controllers noticed something strange on their radar. A cluster of dots appeared suddenly, hovering near the runways. Pilots confirmed seeing a glowing disk hanging silently in the sky. At first, officials thought it was a weather balloon or a trick of the clouds, but what happened next left no doubt. The disk tilted slightly, then shot upward at impossible speed, piercing through the clouds and leaving a perfect circular hole in the sky. Dozens of passengers and workers on the ground saw it with their own eyes. Phones recorded shaky. Videos, voices shouting in fear and amazement. The hole in the clouds remained for minutes, a silent mark of what had just happened. When the news broke, the airport tried to cover it, claiming it was only a weather event. But the witnesses refused to stay silent. Pilots, mechanics, and ordinary travelers all described the same thing: a silent craft, metallic and glowing, vanishing in seconds. For weeks, newspapers and television stations replayed the reports, sparking debates across the world. Scientists said it was impossible, yet the hole in the sky had been real, and so had the fear in the voices of those who saw it. This encounter was different because it had happened in plain sight. No desert, no remote field, but above a major city. It showed the visitors were not afraid of being seen anymore. They were choosing when and where to appear, and humanity had no control. The fourth encounter took place years later, far from crowded airports and cities. In a small fishing village on the coast of South America, locals reported strange lights above the ocean. At first, the villagers thought they were boats with bright lamps, but the lights moved too quickly, darting across the waves in silence. One night, fishermen returned in terror, claiming a glowing sphere had risen from the sea itself. The next day, the villagers found scorch marks on the beach where the object had hovered. Nets were burned, boats damaged by heat that seemed to come from nowhere. One boy said he saw figures in the light, tall and thin, standing as if on water. No one believed him at first, but his story never changed. Investigators later confirmed radiation levels around the site were unusually high, stronger than anything natural. The ocean had become part of the mystery, and whispers spread of hidden bases beneath the waves. David, the young researcher, read about both cases late at night in his small study. He pinned photos of the Chicago airport sighting and the fishing village encounter to his wall. To him, they were more than random events. They were patterns, steps leading to something larger. He felt the same pull he had always known, that the truth was bigger than anyone imagined. Sarah, a journalist searching for answers, began investigating the airport incident. She interviewed pilots who swore they had seen the disk. She spoke with villagers in South America who showed her the burned nets and blackened sand. The more she learned, the more convinced she became. "They're not just visiting," she told David in a late-night call. "They're watching, testing, preparing." The encounters had grown bolder. From deserts to villages, from airports to oceans, the visitors were no longer hiding. The mystery deepened, and the galaxy seemed closer with every passing year. The third and fourth encounters had left the world shaken. Airports, villages, and seas all carried traces of something beyond human understanding. But the fifth encounter would take the mystery to another level, into the very skies of space itself. It happened when astronauts aboard the International Space Station reported strange lights moving outside the windows. At first, they thought it was space debris or reflections from Earth. But the lights grew brighter, forming shapes that circled the station. One astronaut described them as glowing orbs, moving with intelligence, changing direction without force. For minutes, the crew stared in silence, unsure whether to feel fear or awe. One of the orbs came so close that its glow filled the station with blue light. The cameras captured it, but when the footage was sent to Earth, sections of it disappeared. from the official release. Whispers spread among the astronauts that the missing footage showed something more. A shadow inside the orb, shaped like a being watching them. The astronauts later admitted off-record that they had seen something they were told never to speak about. It wasn't space junk, one said quietly. It was alive, intelligent. It knew we were watching. The official report called it unexplained reflections. But those who had been there knew the truth. The encounter in space was undeniable proof that Earth was not the only world being observed. Back on Earth, strange events continued. Scientists in observatories began picking up signals unlike anything natural. Radio telescopes recorded repeating patterns, bursts of sound that matched prime numbers, the language of mathematics. The signals seemed to come from the same region of space shown in earlier encounters. The galaxy was not just watching, it was speaking. David covered his wall with new charts, linking every case together. The crash in the desert, the children. In Africa, the glowing disk in Chicago, the sphere from the ocean, and now the lights in space. To him, the pattern was clear. Each encounter was escalating, each one more public, more undeniable. The visitors were preparing humanity for something greater. Sarah followed the signals closely in her investigation. She visited scientists who played her the recordings, faint tones repeating in a rhythm that could not be natural. "It's a message," she whispered. "They're telling us we're part of something larger." Mark always cautious, shook his head. Or they're luring us in. We don't know their purpose. The fifth encounter, above the earth itself, made the mystery impossible to hide. Humanity was surrounded not just by skies and seas, but by space itself. The galaxy had reached out, and Earth could no longer pretend to be alone.
The silver ship at Crescent Bay did not move through the night. It stayed quiet, glowing faintly like a crescent moon that had fallen to Earth. The guards kept their circle. The cameras kept their watch. Inside homes around the world, families stayed awake, waiting for the next message. The council's warning had shaken everyone. Some prayed, some shouted, some argued, but no one ignored it. At dawn, the visitors stepped down the ramp again. Errol carried no device this time. His hands were empty, open to the morning air. Jack Cole stood at the center of the field with Noah, Lena, Priya, and a dozen others. The sea glimmered behind them. The sound of waves mixed with the low hum of machines. Errol's eyes held the calm of someone who had seen storms before. You have chosen to stand. That choice will bring danger, but it will also bring memory. If you are to face the council, you must know who you were. You must know why. The galaxy cannot forget you, even when it tries. Jack's voice was steady. Then show us. Tammy raised her hand. A small crystal glowed at her wrist. The air above the runway shimmered, and an image formed. It was not like a screen. It was like a window opening into another time. Noah's breath caught. He saw ships rising from Earth long ago, ships that did not burn fuel but rode on light. Their sails shone like mirrors of the sun. Crowds stood on fields and rooftops, watching with awe as the sky filled with wings of fire and glass. Humanity had not only walked among the stars, they had soared. Errol spoke as the vision shifted. Your ancestors built paths that crossed the dark. They reached worlds that thought themselves alone. They brought water to deserts, medicine to plagues, shields to the weak. Not always perfect, not always gentle, but always bold. Where others bartered for safety, Earth gave without price. That is why so many owe you still. The scene changed. The images showed battles among the stars. Ships of Earth, fierce and bright, stood against swarms of predators that consumed whole colonies. A giant beast of metal and bone roared through, the void. But human ships fought it back. One image showed people in armor standing in a circle around a burning city, refusing to yield. Another showed hands reaching through fire to pull strangers to safety. Lena felt tears sting her eyes. She whispered, "We were more than I ever dreamed." Tammy's voice carried softly. You were fire. You were shield. And you were also storm. Pride walked with you. Not all you did was light. Some you conquered when you should have lifted. Some you silenced when you should have listened. In the end, you feared yourselves as much as others feared you. That is why you stepped aside. That is why silence was chosen. The vision dimmed, showing Earth itself, blue and quiet in the dark. Ships folded their sails and drifted away. Records vanished. The galaxy turned its eyes elsewhere. Silence fell, but whispers remained. Soar spoke then, their voice calm and heavy. The council was born in that silence. They built their order on the belief that Earth was gone, a myth, a story for children. But memory never dies. Debts never vanish. That is why we came when we heard your voice again. Jack studied the fading images. His face showed no tears, but his eyes were darker than before. If this is true, then we carry both light and shadow. Why do you want us to return? Why risk war with the Council? Aurel looked at him, then at the rising sun. Because the galaxy is shifting. New empires rise, old hungers return. The Council speaks of peace, but it is peace of chains. They fear chaos more than they value freedom. But freedom is the song you carried. If Earth sings again, others will. Remember, that memory can break chains. Noah stepped forward. You said there are debts, that others owe us. Will they come if the Council strikes us? Tammy lowered her hand, letting the vision fade completely. Yes. Some already stir. They are far, but their ears are open. When Earth stands, they will stand too. But first, you must decide what story you tell. If the galaxy sees you as afraid, they will not follow. If they see you as chains, they will turn away. But if they see you as fire and shield again, they will rise. The words spread through the group like sparks. They felt too large, yet also too true to ignore. Priya spoke softly, her voice shaking. If what you show is true, then maybe silence was mercy. Maybe we were too dangerous. Aurel turned to her. Danger is not always evil. Silence kept you safe, but it also left others to fight without you. The Council would prefer that silence forever. But the galaxy is louder now. Silence will not hold. Jack exhaled slowly. Then Earth must choose not only to stand, but to stand as more than pride. If we rise different. The visitors bowed their heads, acknowledging the weight of his words. That night, leaders around the world argued again. Some said the visions were tricks. Others said they were truth. Armies prepared. Fleets moved. The Council's message still rang, sharp and cold. But alongside it, new voices began to whisper. Old stories once dismissed as myths were told again. Legends of ships with sails of light, of warriors who stood against the dark, of kindness that crossed the stars. Families told these stories to children, and the children listened with wide eyes. At Crescent Bay, Noah, Lena, and Priya sat outside on the cliff, watching the silver ship glow in the moonlight. Noah's voice was quiet. We were more than I ever thought. Lena nodded. But we also fell. That part is real too. Priya hugged her knees. Maybe this time we don't have to fall. Maybe that's why they came. The sea roared against the rocks below. Above, the stars glittered cold and bright. For the first time in living memory, those stars did not seem so far. They felt close, watching, waiting, and far away in the dark between suns, other lights stirred. Some burned with hope, others sharpened with fear. The galaxy had heard Earth's voice. Now it remembered Earth's story. The silence was broken. The next step would not be easy, but the choice had been made.
The fifth alien encounter was unlike any before. It did not happen in a small town or on a lonely beach. It happened high above Earth itself, where only a few humans had ever been. It began aboard the International Space Station. The astronauts followed their usual routine, monitoring systems and observing the Earth below. Space was silent, endless, with stars shining brighter than anywhere on the planet. But that night, something new appeared outside their windows. At first, they thought it was debris. A small glowing point drifted past the station. But instead of continuing its path, the light stopped. hovering in place. Soon another appeared, then another, until half a dozen glowing orbs surrounded the ISS. They moved slowly, circling the station as if studying it. The astronauts reported the sight immediately. Ground control listened in silence, then ordered them to remain calm. Cameras were activated, recording the lights, but what the astronauts saw with their own eyes was far more than what Earth would ever release. One orb drifted closer, so close that its glow filled the cabin with blue light. For a moment, the astronauts swore they saw a shadow inside the orb, the shape of a figure watching them. No one spoke. The crew floated silently, their faces pale. The orb hovered for several seconds, then pulled away. The orbs circled the station once more before shooting into the darkness of space with impossible speed. The astronauts were left staring into the stars, their hearts pounding. When the footage returned to Earth, something strange happened. Sections of the video were missing. The official explanation was technical issues. But the astronauts knew the truth. The missing footage had shown the shadow. Someone on Earth had decided the world was not ready to see it. Weeks later, scientists monitoring radio telescopes detected new signals from deep space. The signals came in repeating bursts, too structured to be natural. They matched prime numbers. The simplest form of universal mathematics. To many scientists, it was undeniable. The same intelligence that had surrounded the ISS was speaking across the galaxy. The encounter shook the galaxy because it proved something new. The visitors were not just observing Earth from a distance. They had stepped into humanity's own path, into space itself. They had crossed the invisible line that separated the planet from the stars. David added this case to his wall of notes. The desert crash, the children's sighting, the Chicago disk, the ocean sphere, and now the lights in space. Together, they formed a chain of events too deliberate to be coincidence. "They're escalating," he whispered. "Each time they get closer. Each time the message is louder. They're preparing us for something." Sarah, reviewing the signals from the telescopes, agreed. "This isn't just contact," she said. "This is introduction. They're showing us step by step that we are not alone." Mark, still cautious, frowned. "Or they're reminding us how small we are. Blib." Fifth encounter was the final piece of the mystery. Humanity had been touched by the galaxy in ways it could no longer deny. From the sands of deserts to the depths of the oceans. From children in villages to astronauts in space, the visitors had left their mark. The truth was no longer hidden in whispers or locked in secret files. The galaxy had revealed itself. And Earth's place among the stars would never be the same again.
The smoke from the battle still hung over the Pacific. The sea carried wreckage of ships, and the air smelled of burned fuel and salt. On the runway at Crescent Bay, silence weighed heavier than the sound of guns. Earth had stood, but at a cost. Families counted names of the lost, and the world felt the price of defiance. Noah sat on the cliff above the bay, staring at the horizon. His hands were scraped, his clothes still smelled of ash, but his eyes held something new. Not just fear, not just grief, but pride. He had seen Earth face the Council and not bow. The Council had called them children, yet those children had not broken. Lena joined him, carrying a flask of water. She sat quietly for a while before speaking. "We lost too many." "We did," Noah said. His voice was low but steady. "But we're still here." Priya came up the path, her notebook in her hands, pages full of hurried writing. Her face was pale, but her voice carried determination. "People are watching, not just here, across the world. The news channels can't spin this as weakness. Everyone saw what happened. Earth stood. Down below, Errol, Tammy, and Soar stood near their silver ship. They watched the sea with calm faces, though their eyes carried sorrow. They knew the cost of defiance. They had seen it before, on other worlds. Yet when Jack Cole approached them, his voice carried no regret. "You told us if we stood, others would hear," Jack said. "So tell me, did they hear?" Errol looked up at the sky, where stars still faintly shimmered in daylight. "Yes, the signal has gone farther than you think. The Council was not the only ear that listened. Old debts stir. Some will answer." Jack frowned. "How long?" "Not long," Tammy said. "Already ships move. They are not the size of councils, but their hearts are stronger." That night, the array picked up new signals. Lena worked through the static until her hands cramped. But when the sounds finally came through, she gasped. They were not threats. They were greetings. "This is the world of Rethan. We remember the shields you gave when the fire beasts came. Our skies still sing your song, 'We come.' This is the colony of Darantu. You lifted us from plague when no one else would. Our children still speak your name. We come." One after another, voices filled the air. Some were rough, some melodic, some strange and hard to shape, but all carried the same message. They remembered. They owed. They were coming. Noah listened with his heart pounding. "They're real. The debts are real." Priya's eyes shone with tears. "We weren't just a myth. We were everything they said we were." The news spread across Earth like wildfire. Crowds filled streets again, but this time they shouted not only in fear, they shouted in hope. Murals of ships with sails of light appeared on city walls. Old songs resurfaced, sung by children who had never known. Them. People who had doubted now whispered of pride. But the council heard too. Their fleets regrouped. Their leaders spoke cold words into the void. Earth gathers ghosts. Ghosts cannot fight. The chains will close. The chorus warned Jack of this. The council will return stronger, Errol said. But every day you stand, more come to your side. That is your power. Not weapons, not fleets. Courage. Days passed. Then the sky changed again. Radar caught it first. Ships broke through the black, not silver like the council's, but bronze and copper, shapes strange and beautiful. They moved with sails of light stretched wide, echoing the old designs Earth once built. The first to land came down in the desert of Aros in the Eastern Federation. Its hull gleamed like stone polished by centuries. From it stepped beings tall and broad, their skin like carved rock. They knelt on the sand and touched it with reverence. Their leader spoke through translators. We are the Rethan. When fire beasts came, Earth stood with us. Now we stand with Earth. Another ship landed days later in the southern seas. Slender figures with translucent skin emerged, glowing faintly with inner light. They spoke softly, their voices like water. We are Daran too. Earth saved us from plague. We will repay the life you gave. More ships followed, small at first, but steady. Each brought promises, each brought hands, not chains. On the runway at Crescent Bay, the visitors from the chorus stood with Jack, Noah, Lena, and Priya as the first allies met them. Arel bowed to the Rethan leader. The song spreads. Jack looked at the growing fleet and felt his chest tighten. This is real. Earth is not alone. Noah watched the sky. For the first time, he saw it not as endless emptiness, but as a road. A road humanity had once walked, now opening again, but not all voices were friendly. The array caught another message. Cold. Sharp. Council. You call ghosts. You gather debts, but debts fade. When we return, those who stand with you will fall beside you. Earth cannot rise. The message did not break them. It hardened them. That night, Earth sent a reply. Jack Cole stood before the array, his voice calm, his words simple. We are not ghosts. We are not myths. We are Earth. If you fear our song, then hear it louder. If you fear our fire, then face it brighter. We will not bow. The signal crossed the sky, carried by amplifiers and echoed by allies. Across distant stars, more light stirred. The council was strong, but Earth was no longer silent. On the cliff, Noah, Lena, and Priya watched the stars. Priya whispered, "Do you think we can really win?" Noah shook his head slowly. "I don't know if we'll win, but I know we won't kneel." Lena smiled faintly, though her eyes still shone with worry. "Maybe that's the beginning. Maybe standing is the victory." The sea roared below. Above, the stars seemed brighter than before, as if the galaxy itself leaned closer. The chorus stood silently beside them, their faces calm, but in their eyes burned the faint glow of hope. Earth was no longer a forgotten world. Allies had answered. Debts were being repaid, and far beyond the horizon, more were on the way. The council would return with fury, but when they did, they would not face silence. They would face a chorus. The weeks after the first allies arrived were filled with motion. Crescent Bay turned from a quiet outpost into the heart of a gathering storm. Ships landed not only from Earth's allies, but also from human nations that wanted to see them with their own eyes. The air buzzed with translators, signals, and hurried footsteps. Soldiers guarded the perimeter, but even they were drawn to the sight of beings who had crossed light years to stand beside Earth. The Rathen helped repair ships damaged in the first battle. Their strong hands shaped metal like clay, their voices deep and steady as they worked. The Duran, too, spread healing light through hospitals, easing pain and curing burns left by council weapons. They moved with quiet grace, and wherever they touched, fear softened into hope. Yet even as help came, the threat grew. Lena spent long nights at her console, her eyes fixed on the patterns across the stars. Each day, the signals grew heavier. Council fleets moved closer. They were not rushing. They were gathering. "They're not just coming to silence us," she said to Noah one evening, pointing at the glowing paths. "They're coming to crush us, to show the galaxy that Earth's return is only a spark to be smothered." Noah leaned against the console, his arms crossed. "Then we need to be more than a spark. We need to be fire." Priya sat in the corner, writing as always, her pen racing across paper. "People are already seeing it that way. Every ally that lands makes the story grow. Earth was a myth, but now it's alive again. The Council is trying to erase us, but all they're doing is proving the legend true." Jack Cole entered then, his face lined with exhaustion. "We don't have much time. Our allies are strong, but their numbers are small compared to what's coming. If we're going to hold, we need more than courage. We need to show the galaxy that Earth is worth standing for." The chorus listened quietly, then Errol stepped forward. "There is one more path, a memory long hidden, a ship that once carried Earth's song farther than any other. If it can be found, it could be the symbol you need. The Council fears it even now." Jack frowned. "What ship?" Tammy raised her wrist crystal. A vision shimmered in the air, showing a great vessel unlike any the others had seen. Its hull gleamed like carved stone, its sails stretched wide, glowing with light from distant suns. Around it, fleets once gathered, and worlds followed it, as if it were a beacon. "This was the Ark of Dawn," Tammy said softly. "It carried your kind to the farthest edges. It bore your banner when others hid. When silence was chosen, it was hidden deep, so that one day it might return." Noah stared at the vision with wide eyes. "It's real?" "Yes," Errol answered, "and it sleeps still. But finding it will not be easy. The Council buried its trail. They fear its rise as much as they fear your voice." Jack looked at the map of stars, then at his people. "Then we'll find it. If it was built by humans, it belongs to us." While scouts prepared to search for the Ark of Dawn, the Council made their move. Messages flashed across the array, cold and sharp. "You gather shadows, you wake ghosts. This is your last warning. When we arrive, there will be no more words." Earth replied with one voice. "We will not bow." The countdown began. Satellites tracked the approaching fleets. Reports filled screens across the world. The Council's numbers were vast. For every ship Earth and its allies had, the Council had 10. The weight of their power was enough to crush hope if hope had been smaller. But hope had grown. Cities painted, stars and sails on their walls. Children sang old songs rewritten with new words. Soldiers stood straighter, knowing they were not guarding only one nation, but the world. Farmers sent food to ports where allies had landed. People who had once feared aliens now welcomed them into their homes. Humanity was not united in every detail, but for the first time in living memory, it was united in spirit. At Crescent Bay, the Allies gathered with Earth's leaders. The runway was crowded with beings of many shapes and voices. The air smelled of smoke and salt, but also of new beginnings. Jack Cole stood before them, his voice carrying through the noise. "The Council thinks this is the end. They think we will break like glass under their boots, but they forget something. We are not glass. We are stone. We are fire. We are earth, and we do not bow." A roar answered him, not just from humans, but from Rathan, Daran II, and others who had come. The sound echoed across the sea. Noah felt it shake him to his bones. For the first time, he didn't just believe Earth could stand, he believed Earth could win. Still, fear lingered. That night, Noah sat alone on the cliff staring at the stars. Lena found him there, wrapping her coat against the cold. "You're quiet," she said. He nodded. "I keep thinking about tomorrow, about how big they are, how many. What if we can't hold?" Lena sat beside him, pulling her knees close. "Then we fall standing, and that matters more than bowing." Noah looked at her, and for the first time since the silver ship landed, he smiled. "Yeah, that does matter." Far above, the stars shifted. Council ships drew closer. Their shadows reached across the void. The largest confrontation in centuries was about to begin, but this time, Earth was not alone. Allies stood ready. Old debts had become new promises. And somewhere out there, hidden in the dark, the Ark of Dawn waited to be found. The galaxy held its breath.